So my friend Johnny, he was back home in China visiting his parents. He found himself on the outskirts of the city where he was staying. As he's walking along, he comes across a homeless man sitting on the side of the road who's asking for money. There's no hat full of change and there's no jar in which to put money. The only thing the homeless man is holding is a small white card with a QR code. So of course, Johnny pulls out his phone, he scans the QR code and immediately just transfers some money. This man who is just transferred money to, his parents or his grandparents never would have even dreamt of being able to have a bank account, let alone savings or a wallet of any sort. And yet here is a homeless man with a payment system that's arguably more advanced than many retailers around the developed world. If ever there were a single image that encapsulated what leapfrogging is, it would be a homeless man sitting on the side of a dusty street holding up a QR code with which he is collecting funds.
Welcome to Future Of, a series where we explore how ripples of innovation become tides of disruption and what organizations can do to ride the wave. It's no secret that the retail industry has undergone radical disruption over the last decade. E-commerce and the rise of digital platforms like Amazon have fundamentally shifted how we do commerce. In the meantime, physical retail spaces have become much less about selling and more about showrooming. And of course, COVID lockdowns were like fuel on a fire, accelerating the adoption of digital commerce across the world. But this created new and unique opportunities for small businesses, brands that could be run from a bedroom, and retailers who could suddenly access entirely new markets through cross-border business. In this episode, we'll explore the future of commerce, specifically how technology adoption in developing economies is allowing some of these emerging markets to catch up and in some cases overtake more mature markets in record time. We'll also discuss how those in the industry are responding to this change in order to capture some of that secret sauce. I'm here at the National Design Center in Singapore to meet with Delisha Surya, who leads Deloitte's Center for the Edge. He's a futurist who helps companies understand emerging trends and what they can do to adapt in an ever-changing environment. So Delisha, when we talk about leapfrogging, what exactly do we mean?
Well, in the context of technology, it's skipping a few generations of the technology. So it's like your grandma going from the trusty landline to the latest generation smartphone. So they skip the brick, skip the flip phone, skip all the few feature phones and a few early generations of smartphones and going to the latest, right? Now, in the context of regions, we're seeing the same thing with the East and the West, where the East has skipped a few generations of technologies. Let's take retail banking, for example. In the West, you saw kind of the banks handling physical cash, going to ATM networks and credit cards, and then slowly on to internet banking and digital world. In the East, where they did not have a lot of ATM networks and even less, so in terms of credit cards, you saw a huge leap to not just digital banking, digital wallets, but even to conversational commerce.
How do you see this playing out in the commerce space?
There are parallels between retail banking and retail commerce as well. Now, in the West, you saw like a similar transition from in-store to online to some sites like platforms like eBay, where it's direct to consumers, and some digital native companies like Dollar Shave Club, were very limited. In the East, in contrast, we went from physical stores and kind of leapfrogged a whole bunch of the online stuff. We had a few of those, went way ahead than the West, much faster.
Delisha, this is all great, but why does it matter?
The shifting patterns and preferences from customers are fundamentally changing the channels to market. And that's fundamentally changing the power in the market. And that's fundamentally changing how value is created and how value is captured.
We've spoken a lot about the leap that's happening in Asia. Delisha, what role do you see the technology platforms like Facebook playing in this transformation?
Technology platforms are the disruptors in this context. We have an example from Thailand. This son of a fisherman, Anurag Saruthai, he's in this town, little town of Satun, and he's just a naturally born salesperson. On his Facebook platform, he has over 1 million followers, and he sells hundreds of thousands of dollars of fish snacks every single month on the basis of having this platform. This is not something he would have ever been able to do prior to this. Well, large brands are slow to catch on to all these changes, and that's understandable. They're much more risk averse. They have a lot more to lose, so it's predictable. However, if they stay back too long, if they hold back too long, they are not going to be able to catch up, and they will be disrupted by an army of new incumbents.
One of my former colleagues, Nishit Mohanty, more affectionately known as Monty, has recently moved back to India after living here in Singapore for several years. He's a consultant by day, but his real passion is collecting rare and unique fountain pens. I caught up with Monty to talk to him about the effects of WhatsApp on the commerce industry in India, and he had a great story to tell.
A fellow fountain pen enthusiast took me to this stationery stall. It looked no better than a dollar store on the third floor of a forgotten shopping mall. Ravi, the store owner, started to clear out his small countertop. He took out a notepad, he took out a bottle of ink, and he then showed us folders of hundreds of fountain pens for us to try. Now, his collection was just awe-inspiring. His prices were overly inviting. Now, I then wondered, how is he managing to make his living just from this store? And he's like, oh no, this store is just so that I have a place to go other than home. My real business actually happens on WhatsApp. So I'm like, what is that? And he's like, he added me to his group of about 400 loyal customers, where every time he would get his hands on a consignment of new old stock, he would post pictures on it. And along with that, he would post a description. As he would start sending all of those images, within minutes, he would start replying to each one of his own images with the words sold.
So there's no doubt that this shift in commerce has been from the bottom up, starting with small businesses in small markets and growing from there. But I also wanted to find out whether the large brands and retailers were seeing the same impact. Were they seeing the smaller players as a threat or an opportunity? I decided to catch up with Delisha to find out what he's seeing out there in the industry.
Within large established firms, the perceived risk of doing something and getting it wrong is much, much higher than the potential gain of trying something new. Smaller firms, startups, and individuals have much less to lose and have much more to gain. Do large firms see these small firms and individuals as a threat? Mostly, no. It's a blind spot for them. But this is like death by 1,000 cuts. Every single one of those small guys knows to do something that's much closer to their hearts that they do much better than the large guys do. There is also an opportunity for large companies. An example here is a startup in Indonesia, Warung Pintar. They've created a digital kiosk that replaces the traditional warungs you see in every corner in Jakarta. What that does is, on the one hand, it's a boon for the small, medium businesses and the individuals who are running those warungs. But from a data and insight perspective, CPG companies now, if they partner with Warung Pintar, get insight into the 23% of the grey market in retail commerce in Indonesia.
Clearly, the CPG brands have been paying attention to these shifts in the industry. In particular, the shift to direct-to-consumer and conversational commerce. I spoke with Rachel Lai, who is an expert in leading digital transformation for product and retail companies. She spent the last several years leading the transformation for a global beauty and skincare brand. Here's what she had to say.
When all the companies saw the opportunity in digital transformation, especially in the opportunity of social selling, our company did the same. However, we encountered internal struggles. Instead of going to the markets, identify those unique characteristics, we went for a global platform. And that probably wasn't what the sales leaders would hoping to get. Opposite to multinational companies, small businesses are already doing social selling by conducting conversational commerce. The only problem is it's all very manual. To summarize, big companies should act like speedboats, like they're small companies. And small companies have to scale to become bigger companies.
We've explored a lot of what's going on in the developing world that's driven the evolution of the commerce industry. But this series isn't about what's happening today. It's called Future Of. So I returned to speak with Delisha, our resident futurist, to find out where he thinks these trends are leading in the coming years.
One of the biggest opportunities in the same developing markets is the bottom of the pyramid. But that will only happen if you can engage them in the wealth cycles and tackle wealth inequality at the same time. Gig work platforms like Grab or Gojek or Uber or TaskRabbit and retail commerce platforms like Facebook, Shopify, Lazada, all of these are providing new lines of access to income generation. Where it really flips is when banking comes in. that is when you can offer them a loan. And for them, as a user, they don't see any difference. It's just using the same digital wallet. This is a pathway to greater financial inclusion. And this is the biggest prize, getting access to them, and also solving the biggest issue, wealth inequality.
As the commerce industry evolves and shifts further towards digital, it's clearly a huge leap beyond anything we've seen before, especially in developing markets. The ability to promote, sell, accept payments, and deliver customer service via digital channels is a real game changer, but much more than just enabling a better commerce experience. This shift could actually be the thing that levels the playing field for small businesses around the world.
The ability for this evolution to facilitate financial inclusion helps open the door to a whole new way of life that was previously inaccessible, contributing to the growth of a new middle class. In its current state, it might look like one small step for commerce, but for many communities in developing markets, it's a giant leap forward into a new era of prosperity. And that's a future we can all buy into.